Hello, my name is Kazerani, and I'm presenting our joint work with Professor Lewi. This work looks at minimal intervention design strategy for transforming tangible and intangible heritage. Here is the list of the content of the presentation, starting from an introduction to the article and the case study, and then the design intervention implemented in the project. Then an introduction to the design strategy model and the performative mode of criticism that we are using in this article to investigate the case study. And finally, the outcomes of the performative critique. This presentation looks at the transformation process of the tangible and intangible qualities of a heritage site, Turó de la Rovira in Barcelona, Spain, into a new public space. The focus is on the designer's strategy in incorporating the site history and the physical remnant structures into a new hilltop public space and a historical museum, which you can see in the images of the hilltop on the top and the museum at the bottom in this slide. This project is directed by Ima Yansana, our architect, along with Ramiro Architects, and has won multiple awards, such as the European Public Space Award in 2012. The site's intangible heritage has multiple historical layers. It was originally an agricultural and recreational context for country houses and vineyards, which was later occupied by the military for installing anti-aircraft gun emplacement during the Spanish Civil War. The hilltop offers a 360-degree view of the city, which made it a perfect vantage point for the installation of the military infrastructure, such as the few circular and rectangular gun platforms and shelter for the troops. This was followed by the informal settlement of the Civil War immigrants after the abandonment of the military during 1940s. The shanty town was later destructed in 1992 by the city council, but the remaining structures of the bunkers, the troops, shelters, and the fragments of the informal houses, such as the tiles and walls, still existed at the beginning of this project. However, the hilltop was dumped by clumps of shrubs and rubbish by the visitors. As commissioned by the Museum of Barcelona, the designers aimed at conserving the rich history of the site, its heritage, and the memory of prior occupations by carefully preserving the previous condition of landscape, also retaining the existing built structures of the bunkers and capitalizing on the commanding views of the city of Barcelona and the surrounding natural landscape. The design intervention was undertaken in two different phases. First, the restoration of the landscape and the reconstruction of the remnants. The second was the renovation of the interior of the bunkers into a historical museum and improving the access to the site, which I will discuss in the following slides. But before discussing the details of the project, I'll give you a brief introduction on the design strategy model, which represents a spectrum of design approaches. We developed this model in 2012 by looking at a number of design strategies that are being practiced in the design of new public spaces around the world, built in the last 2 decades. This model investigates the extent to which the specific preconditions of the sites are retained, removed, or replaced by new settings and interventions. The spectrum takes into account factors such as how the designers have interpreted the existing aesthetics and heritage values of the site, and how these considerations have influenced their approach in maintaining or removing existing structures, objects, landforms, and so on in the process of remaking the sites. And it has helped to understand how the historical and the present sociocultural condition have affected the designer's level of design intervention and their ideas of form and materiality of the built structures and landscape. According to this design spectrum model, this project in Barcelona can be positioned in the minimal intervention zone and under the subtractive strategy. So going back to Tour de la Riviera as an instance of minimal design intervention strategy, the designers undertook a rigorous study on the archaeology, topography, and consulted existing drawings of the site and the physical remnant structures. Their focus was to carefully and incrementally revive and reveal the properties of the site in the past, including the landform, and contours and the remnants of the bunkers, anti-aircraft gun installments, and the informal houses. The addition of new tangible elements and objects was limited to basic construction and repair gestures such as improvement of the pavement material and the addition of fine handrails to safely guide access to the site, as well as reforesting the landscape. The slope of the hill has also been replanted with different species of Mediterranean pines and low height plants to avoid interference with the views from the lookout. In achieving this conscious strategy of minimal tangible intervention, the designers made constant comparison of the current condition of the site with historical images and drawings. As you can see, the images of before and after the intervention in this slide. The design approach is quite evident in the way they have represented their findings on the contextual qualities of the site and the specificity of their design solutions. They looked at the tangible material remaining from the past occupations and traced the process of site transformation from earliest stages of site occupation as an agricultural context to the later informal settlement. Their archaeological investigation, for example, resulted in the discovery of materials and structures of the shacks remaining on the site and dictated the details of the pathways, which were then restored to echo their original condition. Also, the earthworks and subtraction of landfill reconstructed the historical topography of the site, which you can see in the image on the left-hand side. The second phase of the project focused on the transformation of the remnant bunkers into a historical museum and reconstruction of the pathways. The conservation of the bunkers' fragile structure required sensitive heritage-based intervention with specific archaeological criteria. The designer's approach in conserving this heritage allowed for a series of exhibition spaces that could further showcase the less tangible narratives of the site's history. As you can see in the figure on the right-hand side, the detailed investigation of the bunker's floor plans in terms of spatial relationship, material, and the function of each space are traced in the process of reconstructing the museum. Our approach towards the critique of this project has been through a consciously performative mode, which we have also undertaken on a number of other international design public spaces. This approach pursues an experiential inhabitation over a certain duration of time so as to reveal different aspects of the design approach adopted by the designers. In this mode of criticism, I, as the critic, actively engages with different actors involved, from users to designers, and to therefore consciously shift the critic's own subjectivity from a personal exploration of the experience of inhabitation to objectively charting the design process. In order to achieve this fuller, more rounded sense of critique, a number of methods were engaged at Tour de la Riviera, including the study of the design documentation and historical archives, interviews with the designers, which gathered information about the design intentions and the process, and other visual methods, including exploratory photography, site drawing, and site writing, as well as informal interviews with the public visitors to document their inhabitation experience of the site. I applied these methods during my 7-day site visit to Barcelona in 2012 and recorded the individual and collective experience of inhabiting on the site. The images on the slide show examples of applying these methods. As a multimodal criticism, the outcomes of this critique methodology have been represented in visual as well as written material to better present different layers of the design process, the tangible outcomes, and the more intangible qualities and possibilities of inhabitation. So, applying the performative method of critique revealed the community's strong connection to the intangible heritage of the site from a collective point of view. This was evident in my observations and the interviews with the public and the richness of their narratives, as well as the liberal use of the space. The interviewees often associated their experience with the intangible memory of the site or of their childhood memories. The informality and the extant wilderness of the site could be summoned as a key factor in the provocation of memories and the simulation of a sense of spontaneity in the way site was being used today. The designer's resolution to not introduce commercial amenities such as a cafe or a restaurant has also encouraged a liberal and open collective atmosphere. An example is the informal gathering of the local community for nighttime view watching, when the inhabitants bring along their own drinks and food and enjoy watching the views, eating, mingling, and even dancing. While the sensitive design intervention enacted here have choreographed a bodily movement around the site, close observation of the users' movement have demonstrated that their main interest is gathering on the tip of the site to watch each other or take in the available views. The minimal intervention strategy adopted here, which has created the perception of an organic and non-designed space, was evident in the perception of the users and also in my own experience of the site. This has, however, resulted in the site being treated with less reverence and care than perhaps a traditional museum, which has in turn led to the need for ongoing maintenance and repair of the eroding structures and the ongoing removal of graffiti and damage. So here is the visual outcome of the performative critique, which we have produced to represent multiple tangible and intangible qualities of the design intervention in regards to transformation of the history and heritage of the site. Overall, we can conclude that the designer's interpretation of the tangible physical heritage and the intangible and atmospheric qualities and memories of the site is reflected in the retention of the remnant structures of previous occupations during the Civil War and post-war immigration. Also, the designers have a progressive approach in valuing the recent history and the everyday life of the immigrants and military services for choosing their design strategy. Through a delicate archaeological approach, the site heritage has been preserved and has encountered and has encouraged comparison of the images of the site's current condition with the previous settings, such as the layout of the built structures, the informal shacks, the topography of the landscape, and the diversity of the plants. There's no doubt that the minimal intervention approach of the designers and the light touch on the tangible heritage, including the remnant structures and the landscape, has provoked the memory of the intangible heritage of the site. This is particularly evident in the delicate work on the topography of the hilltop and the open participatory nighttime gatherings of the local community, or the transformation of the museum with strong sense of narrative qualities of the past occupations. Hence, the non-design perception of the visitors resulted from this minimal design intervention has heightened the ability of experiencing the intangible heritage. However, as demonstrated in the previous slides, the designer's approach in bringing back a literal image of the past and the visitor's perception of the site as an informal setting has also resulted in issues with maintenance and safety. This is better resolved in the more formal transformation of the interior of the museum, and perhaps a similar approach in restoration of the landscape could improve the condition of the open settings and its future preservation. So this was our recorded presentation for Tangible and Intangible Heritage Conference in London, and hope you enjoyed it. And please let us know if you have any comments or questions, and you can contact us via these email addresses listed below. Thank you and goodbye.